Can I jump into Bob's story, Emma?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so my mentor, and I think it would be fair to say Emma and my mentor, Bob Proctor, way back in 1961, he was a fireman in Toronto. And Bob was earning $4,000 a year and he owed 6,000. So he was in a very, very precarious position. He was in a tough spot. And, when he spoke about this story, or when he shared it, he said, if he had worked for a whole year and a half just to repay debt, he'd have nothing to live on. And he says his days was filled with trying to get creditors off his back. And he says during his time at the fire station, while he was working there was a man who used to come around, a man by the name of Raymond Stanford. And Ray obviously seen something in Bob Proctor, or he took a liking to him. And one day he said to Bob, he said, Bob, you got to be one of the most miserable people that I've ever met. And Bob says, as much as that stung him, and it kind of hurt, he said, he had to admit that what this man was saying was true. He wasn't a very happy person. And secondly, Ray said to him, Bob, you always seem to be coming down with something. You don't have any terminal illness, but you always seem to have a cold or sniffles or a headache or something's up with you. And once again, Bob Proctor had to admit what this man was saying was true. And thirdly, Ray said, you never seem to have any money. And like I've stated, he was earning 4,000, he owed 6. And then Ray said to him, he said, do you think I'm a happy guy? And Bob had to once again admit, this man always seemed to have a spring in his step. He was always upbeat, always enthusiastic. So he had to say, yeah, I agree, you're a pretty happy guy. And then Ray said to him, have you ever seen me when I was sick? And once again, Bob had never seen this man ill. And thirdly, he said, have you ever seen me when I was broke? And Bob said that's the one thing that grabbed his attention most about Ray Stanford. This man always seemed to have a roll of cash on him. And Ray said to Bob, he said, Bob, your way is not working. Why don't you try my way? And then he gave Bob Proctor a copy of this book. The book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Some of you listening to this may be familiar with this book. But Ray gave Bob a copy of this and he said, look, I'm going to lay out a couple of things for you to do. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to write an income goal on a goal card. So I want you to write the amount of money you'd like to earn on a goal card. The very first goal Bob set in 1961 was he wanted $25,000 in his possession. Now, if $4,000 was an annual income, $25,000 way back in 1961 was obviously a lot of money. In fact, Bob said he didn't know anybody who had that type of money. And Ray said, I want you to write an income goal on a card, carry it in your pocket, read it as many times as you can every day. And I also want you to read Think and Grow Rich a bit from this book every day. He said to Bob, he said, this man spent 25 years formulating this philosophy of success. He said, Napoleon Hill interviewed 500 of the world's most successful people over that 25 years, and that's what's led to the formulation of this philosophy. He says he spent his whole life putting this together. I think it would be a prudent move on your part to spend the rest of yours trying to understand what the author is saying here. And Bob Proctor says, he'd never, up until that point, he had never followed any sort of instruction. But he said, this man said to him, Ray said to him, he said, Bob, if you do exactly what I'm going to lay out in front of you, you can have anything you want. And Bob says there's no way he could have believed that. Like, absolutely no way. I just got to read this book. I got to carry this card with me, and follow a couple of suggestions, and I can have anything. He says there's no way he could believe it. But he said Ray Stanford, this man said it with such conviction that he didn't believe it, but he believed Ray believed it, and he done exactly what the man suggested. A year later, Emma, and you know his story, a year later, he had multiplied his income by 43 and three quarters. I think it's 43 and three quarters by from $4,000 to $175,000. Within a year, he grew his income by that much. And within 5 years, he took it over $1 million. Now, his income changed so dramatically, his results changed so dramatically in a short period of time that all Bob had been doing for the last 61 years of his life is teaching ideas around mindset that Emma and I are getting into here today to people all around the world and helping people all around the world. And, after his results changed, he kept asking himself, what changed? What was the cause here? And what he realized after a number of years of study was that he had shifted this mental program in his subconscious mind called the paradigm. So he had shifted his mindset so that it was in harmony with the results that he wanted. So if you're listening to this right now and you set a big goal, right? You set an income goal, or maybe you want to generate a certain amount of passive income from your property portfolio, and you're starting out, or maybe you've achieved some results already, but you want it to get better. What you've got to understand is the journey from where you are to where you want to go is all in your mindset. You've got to upgrade your paradigm so that it's in harmony with the results that you want.
I love it. Very, very powerful story, isn't it? And I think what I really like about the Bob Proctor story as well is the fact that he constantly was inspired to find out what it was that had changed him. Whereas most people, let's be fair, if we have a what would seem like a run of fortune and good luck, and it all seems to go well, we just accept it, don't we? So I've got a chap that actually who I interview relatively regularly as well, and he is extremely successful, and has come from pretty humble beginnings. But one of the things that he always talks about, and it's taken him quite a long time, because when we first met, I'm all about I've had to completely change so much to become who I am becoming, and he's kind of like, oh, this kind of mindset rubbish. And it's kind of like, well, that's because you inherently had so many of these things. For whatever reason, you had them inbuilt. You were already doing a lot of these things. You had this kind of inner self-confidence. You had a vision of who you wanted to be, and you went to get it. And over time, he suddenly realized that he would say to me now, yeah, I do seem to think quite differently to other people. So that is what I find really tremendous in Bob, is the fact that he just had this constant journey to find out what exactly it was that had changed him, and then obviously went on to help others.